your hand or unmute and say, I've got a question, we'd like for you to raise your hand and we can stop and recognize you and go from there. But we will stop at the end to answer questions, so you can jot them down if you want to, or put them in the chat box. We'll address them at the end. So if we don't have any questions, we will get started. So Joe, I'll go through that slide and then I'll let you start after that, okay?
Sounds good.
So a little bit about Southwire. Let's, again, like I said, we got a lot of experience here on different things, and we changed up a slide here than we normally do, and I'm going to get to that here in just a minute, but let's talk a little bit about Southwire and who we are. Southwire is, again, headquartered in Carrollton, Georgia. We're over a 70-year-old company. Still family owned. We're today one of the largest privately owned producers of wire and cable in the United States. We have a really rich history in innovation out there. We always kind of joke about the Romex. If people talk about NM cable as Romex, that's our product name. So that's how entrenched we are in the industry, is that we've been around for a long time. And again, we have a rich history in innovation. We can, get into some of that, but I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next slide. Joe, if you want to click that for me, I don't want to mess you up. So let's talk about who we are and where we've got about 8,000 employees. We've got 34 plants, 10 customer service centers. We have really 4 different divisions. We have our wire and cable, our tools and components, our SIMpull products, and our operations and our metals. Not only do we make the wire, we also make our hand tools. We have components in our pulling equipment. We've moved into a lot of the prefab boxes. We also have our operations with our speed and different things like that. We also make machines that make the rod that make the cable. So that's another big thing. And our metals division. So we are a diverse company. Not a lot of people just think we're wire. Actually, I ran into some people on vacation. They thought we were just a wiring company. They did, and he was in pipe fitting, didn't know we owned Sumner. So again, a lot of people aren't aware of some of the business units we're in. Back in 2018, we hit a milestone of being a $6 billion privately held company. So that was a big deal for us to hit that size, but still being privately held. So really proud of that and what we represent to the industry. All right, Joe, next slide. So a little bit of fun facts I'd like to call is, talking about the wire rod, half of the world's copper passes through a Southwire SCR machine, meaning that we make SCR is Southwire continuous rod. So in 1964, we patented a process to be able to make copper rod on a continuous process. That kind of revolutionized the industry at that time of how rod was made. And so we actually build those machines and we sell those around the world. So again, half of the world's copper goes across one of our machines. So it's pretty unique. Utility, half of the power produced in the United States is transmitted across a Southwire cable. So not only we are in the building and commercial industry, industrial, but huge in the utility market. That's where we got our start back in 1950, was doing right-of-ways for the rural co-ops. And so we're still big into that business today in our utility business. Especially now with the storms we've had in the last year or so, it's been a real huge business for us, and replacing a lot of those transmission lines. And then we talk about the last one. Half of the U.S. homes contain a Southwire product. I talked to you about Romex. We joke about that, that's our product. When people refer to NM cable, they refer to Romex. That's our product name. So we're big in the residential market in those cables and your service entry, your NM, which is our Romex cable. We've done a lot of innovations in that market regarding power signal control with our Romex products. So again, we're a diverse company in different markets. And so let's talk about where we are. We have our wiring cable. You see our tools there, and we talk about our components. That's our boxes, our connectors. Now we have different connectors for pipe, boxes, 4 boxes. Then we get into our cable management and our customization. That's our DCN products for data centers. We pre-make whips. So we've moved into varying assets of the building process. So again, one thing down at the bottom of this slide shows you kind of 4 areas what we try to do. Number one, we try to simplify installation. And we're going to talk about solutions today and what we're talking about, why are we trying to simplify that installation, reduce the man hours and labor costs on the job, promote a safer work environment. Safety is huge right now, and it's always been, but it's getting even more. You see with COVID, it's even added new things we have to deal with on the job site. And then meeting those unique applications, like that DCM products you see up there, there's unique applications that we can meet and help contractors on the job site. So next slide, Joe. So you're going to hear us talk about a lot about solutions, okay? So when we mean solution, this is a great picture that represents that, is that it is not just one product. It's a group of products, or it's a group of either a product and a service or whatever we do. But that solution represents a package of items that work together. When we look at these products that go into, we talk about a solution, each one of them builds on each other. They, not just your tugger, but the rope with a tugger and the pulling heads, or our rail jacks, or our no lube cable. All this stuff works together to make a better and faster install, much safer too. So, again, Southwire started in this talking about solutions back in 2004, and it was really because of a labor shortage. So I want to talk about why are we doing that, and here's some facts that actually this is a new slide we wanted to add, and here is the reason we're doing these solutions. So ECM Magazine actually published an article this month talking about getting students into the industry, and there were some numbers in there I wanted to pull out that really kind of justifies why are we doing what we're doing? Why is Southwire looking at making these solutions? Why are we looking at labor and safety on the job? And so right now, roughly, the first statement here is roughly 195,000 construction jobs are open right now, Q1 of 2021, meaning that there's 195 jobs that we need to fill. Okay, so right now we have a huge gap right now in the construction industry. Another fact that really caught my eye in here is they're looking at the statistics and projections out. By 2029, we're going to need another 62,000 openings in just the electrical market. And they say the statement right here, that's double what we need right now. So they're saying right now we have about 30,000 openings. By 2029, that's going to double because of the construction and what's going to happen with our growth in this country. So we go back to what is happening right now. We saw in 2012 that was a bubble was going to pop with people leaving the industry. So I've got some trend graphs here. These are actual U.S. Census data. And one thing I want to point out, if you'll look at the chart to the right where I've got the red, there's a line there. It says 45. So Joe, I'm going to try to take my mouse over here. This 45 to 64-year-old. You look at 2020, you see right now we're around 83 million people that are in that age gap. When you look at that and that age gap, when we look at the electrical industry, right now the average retirement age is around 58. It used to be 54. Now it's moved up to 58. So in that target range right there, that 45 to 64, that's where those people are retiring. Well, look at the number, 83 million. So let's look at what the industry has coming in. That would be your 18 to 24-year-old. So when you look at that population group of 30 million, and we've got 83 million leaving, and you look at that trend all the way out to 2035, that number stays around 30 million, but look at the 45 to 64, it stays around 83, 81. Then we get to 2035, it's jumping to 84. So we're basically 2 to 1 or more than 2 to 1. We're losing 2 people, and I heard this figure earlier that for every 2 we lose, we're getting 1. Well, look at the population. That's why. We have less people in that age group that's getting in the industry versus the people that are leaving. So that's this critical mass that we're dealing with. It's not just trying to get people in the industry. We have less population to work with. So that's what we're challenged with. So we have got to find ways to do more with less. We're not going to have more people coming in this industry because we don't have the population to fill it. So that's the gap that we're dealing with, and that's why we got to start thinking different in what we do on a job site than what we did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. We got to look at how do we become more efficient, and that's what Southwire is doing with these solutions. Is we're trying to give you ways and products and solutions that take less people to install it. So that's where I'm gonna kind of switch over to Joe. And so that's just some reason we're doing what we're doing. And we're vigilantly looking at how can we improve things to make it better out there to do more or less, because we're going to have to deal with that. That's the problem we'll have, and you see that's not going to get any better. So how do we do that? So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start from there.
Thanks, Bill. Right, so Bill was talking about, the safety and that productivity. Everything we do at Southwire is focused on that safety. And we look at increasing that productivity to increase the profitability for the contractor. Now, we think about safety, going back to Bill's point there, we don't want anybody getting hurt on a job ever, but you don't want a debilitating injury that's going to make them leave the industry. But also, all these little injuries that they gather along the way and accumulate and make it so when they get into their 50s, it's hard for them to continue working in the same capacity, right? So we're looking to eliminate a lot of those smaller injuries along the way too. And then we're just going to kind of dive deep into how we're going to do that as we address with our solutions. All right, so going into safety, labor is the #1 risk factor on the job. You order material, it's going to show up, hopefully on time, what you ordered. But that labor pool is that variable. Who do you have on a job? What's that mix? What level of experience do they have? Can they work safely together as a crew? Because that safety matters to a contractor for numerous reasons. One, because we're going to go with the fact that most contractors are good human beings here, and they just want their folks to get home safe. But beyond that, it does have a financial implication, right? If they can work safer, they can lower their mod rating, their experience modification rating, right? The industry average is a 1. If you're below that, you're doing better. If you're higher than that, you have more recordable incidents. Well, when that mod rating starts to get worse than average or higher than that 1, then you start to, your insurance rates are going to rise, your comp costs are going up. You get some GCs, some owners of building, owners are not going to allow you to bid on work if your mod rating is too high, if you have too many entrants. So that's why we're looking at the safety, right? We want to reduce those injuries. You have those different types, lifting, back injuries, the hand cuts from using sharp tools, sharp objects, and those repetitive motion strains. So we're looking at how we can address those types of injuries so that we can keep people working safer longer. In here for a second. All right, so we look at the opportunity. If we look at how the day of electrician is spent, right? Where are we wasting that time and that labor? So this chart is based on a study done in the early 2000s, right, on how an electrician spends their day. So about 32% about a third of it is spent in direct installation. All right, that's what the contractor's billing for. That's how we're doing submitting for draws, is by what's installed on the job. All right, and you got your miscellaneous, people on the restrooms, coffee breaks, whatever. In effect, that's maybe people putting stuff in, they're not quite sure about it, they need to take it out and fix it. Indirect, those are your other costs associated with being a contractor, but really the big opportunity here is in this material handling. And then we talk about the hand touches. How much are we handling a piece of material before it meets its final installation, right? We order it, it comes in, we're unloading it on a job site. We need to move it to a spot. If it can't be installed right away, where is it? Where's your lay down area on a job site? Is that a big area? Probably not. These material storage areas, Connex boxes, are that space is at a premium where you need to continuously move that material around. So there's, part of it's the time of getting the right material at the right time. And then you start to think, a lot of contractors are doing prefab work and being very successful with that. And that's great, but that even adds some more material handling because they're unloading it at their shop, warehouse, their prefab shop, getting it to, whatever assembly tables they have set up, putting it together, unpackaging it, bundling it up, putting on, a lot of times, special carts depending upon fixtures, conduit. Then they're handling it, getting out to the job site. And now it's like you still need to handle that material at the job site, just like it was showing up from your supply house. But you have some of the pre-assembly has been done for you, right? So that's what we're looking to address, is a lot of how can we make that material handling better. That's kind of where our easy money is, let's say. All right, so if we look at using the SIMpull solutions, we want to talk about that pre-planning, right? If we can pre-plan properly, it's going to pay us dividends throughout the course of the job. So that's why we look at that solution. So what we offer at Southwire is we offer that training, support, and follow-up. It's a couple, Bill, Johnny, and myself are your trainers. We also have our field teams. We have our contractor solutions professionals. These folks will get out there and talk to you, help you plan out your cable runs, talk about the solutions we have and where they would be most effective on your job. We have our field tool specialists, or our contractor equipment specialists, we're calling them now. These guys can come out and help you set up poles and run website. In addition to doing training for SSU, Bill, Johnny, myself, we also coordinate with a lot of the apprenticeship programs throughout the country here. These are our inputs when we're talking about that, younger generation coming up and that need for numbers around 100,000 electricians. Well, you don't just decide I'm going to be an electrician and poof, I'm an electrician, right? You need to go through some sort of process to become effective, whether it's through an apprenticeship program or some sort of training program. And that's where we're there to help support and get these folks using these innovative methods from the ground up, right? Well, the hope is that if we plan properly, we can really address that material handling and take that wasted time in material handling and move it to direct installation, right? Now we're almost doubling the amount of time we're spending on direct installation, which is going to really just increase that efficiency on a job site and make things safer, more profitable for the contractor. All right, we got a duplicate slide there. Right, so the contractor adopter challenge, we talked about labor being that #1 challenge. There's always that resistance to change. This job, all the trades really are handed down from, the older folks to the younger folks. So you get a lot of like, well, this is we've just always done it that way, why are we doing any different, right? Well, the reason you need to do it different is because other folks are adopting these methods and seeing great savings and increasing their safety. And it's a competitive business, right? If you don't keep up, you fall behind, right? Another thing that happens is the lack of planning. A lot of times in contractors, we see a lack of communication or miscommunication between the field and the office. I worked for one contractor back in the 90s and they didn't want to give me the hours the job was bid on. And it's like, how does that make sense? Well, you'll use up all the hours if you know what they are. It's like, well, more likely I'll probably go over them if I don't know what they are. If I know what they are, I can tell you whether your thoughts are reasonable when you bid the job, right? And there's a lot of that mentality out there. You want to use your planning to make the rest of the job go more smoothly. The other big thing we see is as people start to adopt these solutions, the time savings is there, but they're not realizing it because they haven't reallocated that manpower. So they're still putting the same number of people on a pole, even though they can do it with less. And then on the buying end, you get into the fact that, when we're shopping materials and tools, where a lot of times our purchasers are looking just for what's that lowest price. And a lot of times they're even incentivized on how cheap they're getting stuff. But we need to look at what's the lowest cost to actually get it put in and installed so we can bill out for it. So if I'm saving time on it, even if the material is a little bit more expensive, net I'm ahead of the game, and just kind of getting past that mentality of we just want to get the stuff as cheap as we can. All right, so we look at the job cycle. We have your pre-construction phase. We're going to talk about some of the ways we can help you there. So planning, we actually have a class a little later this afternoon. Cable coil calculator John will be doing. Right, with the SIMpull wire, we can really think about how we can do runs more effectively. And this was a pole back in the day that you couldn't do with conventional wire, right? You would exceed the tensions and a sidewall pressure on the wire. This is a run, it's a 455-foot run with 790s in it. And you would put a pole box in, usually somewhere in the middle here, replace that 490. And you're needing to pull in and out of the box or, pull it out, stretch out on the floor and backfeed it. Well, by doing some planning, you can plan this run out so you can just pull straight through. So you're eliminating all that time of laying that material out on the floor of the wire. and pushing it back in. You're also eliminating all that back strain, because if you have, 600,000s or weigh about 1.5 pounds a foot per conductor, right? So if you're stretching out a few 100 feet on the ground, people are handling that, and that's not going to go well for their backs. So by taking that time ahead to plan using that cable pull calculator, you can eliminate some of that strain. So here's just a quick graphic, and like I said, we have a class later on this afternoon on it. You can plan out your whole wire pull to help you eliminate wire damage, see if it's going to be a problem ahead of time, so you can kind of see, here's the red, we're going to get the red out in our planning stage. We're going to eliminate, the worst thing that can happen, or one of the worst things that can happen on wire pull is that wire getting stuck, and now what? You're trying to cut in a pull box, trying to pull the wire back, or you decide, oh, we need to add some sweeps after the fact. Well, it would have been much better to know that before you ran the conduit. By doing this, we're making everything safer, but also more efficient. Requires less people involved in a pull. You can take a pull down from 6 to 8 people to probably 3 or 4, depending upon a particular pull, and that's going to increase profitability, but only if you take those people and put them somewhere else in the job and just don't have them standing around watching the pull when they're not required there.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, I want to make a comment right here. I actually had this conversation with a owner 2 weeks ago, and they had been through our class but not using this, and his question was, how do I get more efficient? And he's using the solutions. I said, well, I asked him, how many times are you using the cable calculator on all your pulls? He said, oh, every once in a while. I said, no. This is your crystal ball that now you can see what's going to happen on that job, so you can plan your labor and your equipment accordingly. And this is a huge tool that Joe says, talk about. This is a great pre-planning tool that you need to be using on every feeder pull, because I've had a contractor here in town that they were trying to figure out how to set up a 6K when it could be an XD1. They only had 200 pounds of tension. So they didn't need to set up a 6K. They could use a hand, or we'll call our circuit puller, to do this job. So again, this is a really valuable tool, and we can't stress this enough, how to use this.
Yeah, like I said, we have a class on this later today. If you're not comfortable, you can always reach out to any of us. Our contractor solutions professionals, they love to help contractors out doing this, right? Because they can kind of get insight at the beginning of the job. And in addition to just planning out for that feeder pull, what it really does is it sets up that planning mindset around a job. A lot of time in all the trades, we get into this kind of run and gun mentality where we're always behind the 8 ball on time, and we're always playing catch up and never stepping back and taking a look ahead. And this kind of helps with that mindset. All right, we do have an app-based version of that also. Most people prefer the desktop version, just because everything's kind of out in front of you all at once, but the app-based version is great if you want to just do like a one-off, you're on a job, and 4-person on a job, or even a journey people doing a pull can just do something really quick just to make sure things are going to go easy. All right, the Configurator Plus web app, this talks about stacking reels, and we have a class on this tomorrow. And we'll talk more about the idea of paralleling and stacking reels. What you're doing is looking to eliminate the number of reels you need to set up, and we'll get into that. We have some pictures of that in a few seconds, but the way you're going to do that is using that Configurator Plus app. It will help you allocate the wire to those reels to minimize the reel count you have on a job, which again just directly addresses that material handling. All right, some other services we have is we have our speed service. This is great if you have a job that's got a tight deadline, it's expedited. If you have some sort of particular cable configuration that's below what the minimum order would normally be, and you think of it like a concierge service, you're going to get a contact person that will kind of just make sure your order goes through the process smoothly, shows up in a very timely fashion, sooner than it would otherwise. And it makes it so jobs that you might not have even thought about bidding before, with this additional support, they become a win for the contractor.
Joe, you may try to hit the enter key, and it may just advance it for you on your.
Yeah, there we go. We got it. All right. So here's where we're talking about using that Configurator Plus, right? If we think about a traditional wire pull, if we got a couple different sets of wires we're going to pull, so we have three runs we're going to pull, and we have 5 reels for each set. Our phases, our neutral, and our ground. Well, that's 5 reels per pull. You're going to have 5 sets of jacks, 5 axles. You're going to have a pallet jacks moving around. You're probably going to have at least 7 electricians, because you're probably going to have a person pulling off of each reel to get ready for the feed. And then once you complete one pull, you got to break those reels down and set up your next reels. So when we look at the right, we're using the SIMpull reel. Well, in addition to using the SIMpull reel, we're taking advantage of a couple different things based on that planning. One is we're paralleling those conductors, which if you're not paralleling the conductors, I don't know where you've been for the past 25 years. I mean, this has been happening since the 90s. There's really no reason to not parallel your runs. All right, the SIMpull reel can hold 6,000 pounds of wire. We'll dive more into that later. But beyond the paralleling, what we're doing is we're stacking it. So they took some time ahead and they figured out in the Configurator Plus is here are the 3 ones we want to assign to this reel. And this is the order we want to pull them in. So the last one we want to pull, we're going to kind of bury at the inside of that reel. It gets loaded onto the reel, puts the heads on it, we shrink wrap it, right? And then you add the next layer, and then you add the next layer. Well, you know, that SIMpull reel takes the 5 traditional reels and makes them one for that first pull. But now when you go to do your second pull, you're not needing to break the reels down, because after that, you pull that first pull, that wire's gone, and now the next run is there for you to pull. So it eliminates that breakdown between the pulls also. So it makes it possible to just kind of almost continuously be pulling wires with, you know, just a few minutes in between to set up your heads, you know, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to get ready to do the next pull. All right, so here's just a, you know, actual picture of the setup. We think kind of the old way, the old style Boltdown Hugger. We need to hammer drill down the base, anchor it, usually pins and chain. One of the chains is missing or something like that. You're doing it out of the gang box. You have all those reel jacks, the big rope, your lubricant, and all the associated tools. And this here is just a parallel spool on our Pro jacks, right? Well, the head's already on, so you jack that wire up and you're ready to start pulling. You connect the clevis and you're ready to go. So you're making it so that those, you know, if you were planning for 6, 7 folks on that original pull, by changing how you order the wire, right? You're now down to needing maybe 3, right? And those folks, those other 3 folks, there's other work in the building they can be doing. You're not sending them home. You're getting them doing the things you need them to be doing. All right, what makes all this possible is our SIMpull no lube wire. It's got a lowest coefficient of friction of any wire out there, and we guarantee that. This does a lot of things. One is we don't need the lubricant, so you eliminate that step of having to spread that lubricant on the wire. We were out doing a training at apprenticeship the other night, and you know, if you think about if you've ever seen a wire pull with lubricant going on, the tendency is we take an apprentice and we have them spreading that lubricant on. Well, you're taking the least experienced person on a job and you're putting them in possibly the most dangerous spot of a pull, right, where that wire is going into the conduit, right? Well, we eliminate the need for that. So you eliminate the need for one person just spreading lubricant, right? It's going to save time. The wire is going to go in faster. It's available in, you know, regular 600 volt and medium voltage. It also comes in circuit wire. We'll talk a bit later in our coil packs and barrel configurations. And here's an example that came out of that calculator. This is the tension for that pole that we had shown the diagram of before. The red line there is using conventional black jacket wire. And you can see that, you know, as you get up to that 7th 90, you have 85,000 pounds of pulling tension. Like you're going to need a locomotive to try and pull that. And by the time you do that, that wire is getting damaged. You know, the pulling tension shouldn't exceed 10,000 pounds. Well, just doing nothing else other than replacing that with the SIMpull wire, it's going to drop that highest tension to 2,700 pounds, right? And a 6K puller can do that all day. Minimizing both the effort needed, but also, you know, the wear and tear on the equipment and the wire. When we look at sidewall pressure, this is usually the more determining factor in a pull. We're usually going to exceed sidewall pressure well before we exceed our maximum tension. The maximum recommended sidewall pressure, we're looking here, they're going up to about 48,000 pounds of sidewall pressure, where just by using SIMpull there, it's at 1,500 pounds. All right, we talked about the stack reel a little bit with the on that SIMpull reel before. but this is just a better graphic of it where it's labeling it. You show you have that last pull you're gonna do is on that inner layer. The pull before that's on the next layer up. Each one of them are separated by shrink wrap. It's labeled on the side so there's no confusion. And we're going to talk about putting those SIMpull head and pulling grips on there to eliminate some of our time spent on a job. So you think about how heads were put on jobs. There are a couple different ways. You know, you got your conventional type basket grips, your Kellam's grips, Kellam style grips. You got the fingers that, you know, connect in with your Allen keys, but you never can really seem to find that Allen key, or you have the wrong size head, so you're skinning off some of the exterior conductors like you got there. Well, those ends are sharp. It involves somebody holding the wire up for the other person to prepare it. Usually there's somebody, this might be the foreman walking past, that's starting to get a little bit of an ulcer watching the hours fly out the window, right? This guy here's already got a cut on his finger. And you know, to make up a head at its quickest, if you're doing it the old-fashioned way, it might take you 20 minutes, but it could take upwards of 40 minutes, depending upon how to taper up. And plenty of electricians, I never lost a head. And my response is, how many runs have you got stuck though? Because a lot of times we're making up those heads where the people that are making them up want to make sure you don't want to lose that head, because that's like a bad thing to have on your name, right? They're going to make sure that head doesn't break, but it ends up being so bulky that has a hard time going around to 90. It just makes the run way harder than it needs to be. So with the SIMpull heads, they get crimped on at the distributor. When it shows up on a job, all you need to do, you know, it's tied off on a reel, all you need to do is connect the clevis to the rope and you're ready to pull. So you're eliminating all that time standing around. You know, we think about the folks making up the head on the feed end standing around. Well, what are the people on the pull end doing if they already got the puller set up? Well, they're also just kind of standing around waiting for that to go. So a couple different ways we can get the wire off the reel. The point of all these was to eliminate that back strain. A lot of times with the older A-frame style pullers that got the crank to raise it up, a lot of contractors will have the bigger ones on site because they don't want to have a variety of different sizes for the reels. What you'll run into a lot of times with those jacks is the arbor hole is below the height of the jack, even when that jack's at its lowest. So people end up trying to physically lift that reel up onto the jack. I can't tell you the number of back injuries I've seen from people trying to do that. These reels are heavy. And unfortunately, we kind of get some of that macho mentality out there. I can do it, no problem. It's like, great, but in 2 years, you're not gonna be able to walk because your back is so beaten up. So all these solutions here are meant to be able to lift a reel that, you know, with that arbor, even if it's down low, up without having to put your back into it, whether it's the lever mechanism on the Maxxis jack, the crank on the quick jacks, or on the pro jacks. You can see he's actually got a cordless drill here. There's a gearbox here where they're going to use the cordless drill to run that up and down to the appropriate height, you know, just get it off the floor or get it off of its pallet. The other safety aspect of all these is they all have a way to capture the axle. So they either have this hook or the full wraparound on a Maxxis jack. And when a run starts to get towards the bottom of the run, a lot of times when those reels get light, that reel sometimes wants to jump off. So that's preventing that. Right. And in addition, they all have roller bearings on there. They're going to minimize the friction of that wire coming off the reel. So it's really making it so those folks on a feed end are really just needing to watch the wire come off, and they're not needing to pull it off the reel. All right, we go to the SIMpull reel. All right, this is designed to really minimize the material handling on a job because you eliminate the reel jacks entirely. You get this reel loaded up. The 61-inch reel can hold up to 6,000 pounds. No jacks needed. It fits through a 36-inch doorway. We're actually having a bit of a debate on this on the other day, and we measured it out. The reel itself is about, at its maximum, about 33 inches, which means it can fit through a 36-inch doorway, even if the door is kind of already in there. And we just actually did that at our training center out here the other day. It can be handled by one person. The inner core spins independently from the outer flanges, which means we're not needing to worry about trying to get that wire spinning. We're just moving the weight of the wire, which greatly eliminates the stress and strain. The big benefit comes in into turning that. I can fit it through that doorway. I can get it to an electrical closet. Oh yeah, electrical closets, you know, for the past, I don't know how many years, they need to have a 36-inch doorway. So if it's a new job, that doorway is going to be 36 inches. But even bigger than that is you can get in tight spaces and get behind gear and set it up where I might not have been able to set up multiple reel jacks before. And I can get this set up right close to that switch gear, and that wire is just going to either, you know, go down into the ground or go up above with minimal handling from the people. They roll into place, they set the chocks, and they're ready to pull. All right, there's a lot of demand based on this for, well, I still have a bunch of wooden reels. How do I handle that? So we have the flange, and this can connect onto wooden reels from 22 to 34-inch diameter of up to 2,000 pounds. And it gives you kind of the same maneuverability to those smaller wooden reels that you would get with the SIMpull flange. Oh, double back there. All right, so the SIMpull rope, we keep talking about it as solutions, right? If we think about the older style double braid composite rope there on the right, and there's a picture of the older style reel stands too. And you can actually see what I was talking about there. This reel jack is at the lowest setting. They had to lift that reel up onto there. Now it's rope, so it's probably not crazy heavy, but that old double braid composite rope could probably weigh about 150 pounds, especially if it starts to get wet, absorbs water. What we looked at is how can we make the rope better? So the SIMpull rope come in a couple different sizes, but we have that 9/16, which has that 32,000 pounds breaking strength, which is comparable to a 7/8 old style 7/8 rope, right? You know, back in the day, it used to be like, oh, we'd have a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch or a 7/8 inch rope, depending on pole. Well, we'll just get the 9/16 SIMpull rope and it does the job. It also has a couple benefits beyond that breaking strength, right? It's low stretch, so that eliminates some of the surge you would get as the wire's passing through the conduit. You'd see a lot of times if you watch a pull, it looks like the people on the pulling end aren't pulling, and then the wire goes in 2 feet. Nothing happens, and the wire goes in 2 feet. That was actually the stretch in the rope. The rope's getting stretched, and then it's contracting, stretching, contracting. So this minimizes that, almost completely eliminates it to just make that pull smoother and safer for the people on a feed end. It weighs significantly less. You know, a 600-pound rope weighs about 50 pounds. And it also has that reduced coefficient of friction. It doesn't absorb the water and helps eliminate that rot that you'd sometimes get that rope with dry rot. What we recommend people do, and this is just, you know, people have preferences, is we can actually flake this rope off as we pull it into a trash can. And we see a lot of folks will actually get the set of wheels on the bottom of the trash can to make it easier to move around. A couple different reasons. One, it's just real convenient. You have a little space to put some accessories that you might need for the pulling end on there. But also, it just eliminates the set of reel jacks and the axle. So now you have the one thing to move to the pole instead of 4 pieces between the rope, the axle, and the 2 jacks. We also do have that in a 1/4 inch and an 1/8 inch size for, you know, poles that aren't as rigorous. We look at setup on our pullers. We want them to set up quickly with minimal effort. And we're just going to talk about a couple of safety features here. So we have our 6K puller here set up for a pole coming up from underground there. Notice that the capstan is vertical. If we go to our XT10, the capstan is vertical. Reasons for this is it takes the person that's pulling and it's going to put them off to the side when they're pulling that rope. When we have a horizontal capstan, you tend to stand behind the thing and you're in the line of the tension of that rope. All right. We have a feeder here. These you're not seeing as often out on jobs just because of the reduced friction in the cable. It's not as necessary as they used to be, but there are definitely some situations where they help. To help make it safer, this is really one of our biggest innovations around safety of pulling is the trigger system. All right. When we think about a pole, something going wrong with it, a lot of times that difficulty is at the feed end, and the people on the pulling end really have no no insight to what's going on down there, and we're shouting over radios or other things to try and get them to stop the pull. What this does is it takes a set of wireless communicating triggers, and it gives the people on the feed end a foot pedal also. So you got 1 foot pedal for the puller, you got 1 foot pedal for the feed end. In order for that puller to go, both foot pedals need to be pressed down. So if anybody sees anything going wrong, they take the foot off the pedal, the pull stops, and you have time to regroup. Also comes with these wireless repeaters. That signal is going to carry really far, but if you get a building that has a lot of contract that's going to diminish the signal, you can plant one of these in the middle to repeat that signal. It also has the additional functionality that's got the red stop button on there. So, if you're doing a job that's passing through a few pull boxes and somebody's just kind of following the pull, making sure the nose passes through cleanly and something doesn't look quite right, they also then have the capability to stop the pull. So if you see anything going wrong anywhere, anybody involved can kind of stop that pull. And it just eliminates that miscommunication. We also have the tensiometer. That's going to measure your pulling tension. Like I said, so you kind of have that's the bookend to the cable pull calculator. Cable pull calculator, we're going to calculate the pulling tension. Tensiometer, we're going to verify that. So a lot of times on these mission critical jobs, data centers, hospitals, they want the tension calculated, they want to verify the pull as it happens, and then they want to see the report on the pulling tension. All right, so here's just some time savings comparison between a traditional way, using the whole suite of solutions there, right, from the jacks, making the heads, setting up the puller, the rope, and completing the pull, and then also saving time between pulls without having to reset because we're using those stacked reels, right? So here we can do a pull in 39 minutes using the solutions versus the traditional method, setting up the jacks, spending time setting up the head, and then coffee break swings in, setting up the puller, and that's going to take you 195 minutes. Now remember, that's not, that's the time. Also think about the number of people, because you got a multiplier acting there, right? So you're talking about 40 minutes versus almost over 3 hours. When you think about the factor that it probably has double the crew, that's even going to add up more. Now we're going to kind of steer over to branch circuits. Why do we care about the branch circuits? If we look at the feeder end, the labor is only about 30% of that cost, and the materials are 70% because those metals and jackets and everything are expensive. When we look at branch, that kind of flips. The labor cost is about 70% of the material cost, the 30% the conductors are thinner, and it just it's more time consuming. There's so much more branch work on most jobs that there's a real opportunity in branch circuits now. In the feeder side, we're talking about maybe saving hours. We're talking about savings in hours, but in the branch side, we're going to be talking about minutes and in some cases even seconds, right? But over the course of hundreds or thousands of cycles, that's going to add up. All right, so we look at the drum, our SIMpull barrel. It utilizes the same no lube technology on the wire, right? We can get it optimized in a couple different ways. The most common configuration is a 7-wire or 7-conductor. We got our 3-phase wires, our neutrals with stripes to match the phase color. So eliminate some of that problems identifying or needing to label before we pull, and a ground. So with one setup, I'm pulling a full boat home run. I don't need to set up different reels. Again, you can get it, 14, 12, and 10, up to 7 conductors. Sometimes you'll see pulls where they're doing multiple sets. So they'll have 1 7-conductor and 1 6-conductor because you only need that 1 ground for the whole conduit, right? In larger wire sizes, you can get up to 4 conductors, so the 8 and 6. So like if you're doing maybe fan units or different types of motor loads, you have your 3 phases in your ground. What it does is it eliminates loading all those spools up onto a conventional wire tree. Easy to maneuver around a job site, easier to plant in a panel. Also, you can get our MC cable in that, your MCAP. It's in this fiberboard barrel here. The same kind of concept. What we're looking at is, can we put more wire in one unit and have less pieces to handle? That 7-conductor 12-wire barrel has 21,000 feet of wire, and it has 3,000 per phase, right? Which is more than a 2,500 foot spool per phase, all in that one system. All right, with the barrel, that wire is all loaded in at one time, so you need to pull it out at one time, meaning if there's 7 conductors, you need to pull all 7 conductors at the same time. Well, that's not always what you need to be doing, so that's why we came up with the coil packs. Again, it's got the no lube wire. It comes in all our stock colors. You get the neutrals with the stripes on it. You can get 1 and 2 wire packs in 10 and 12. So meaning like if I get a 2 wire number 10, I can have the phase and its neutral in the same package. But I'm eliminating that need to handle the 2,500 foot spools. And the other thing is these are designed to weigh. The amount of wire they have in there is optimized so that coil pack weighs just about 50 pounds to make it easier to carry, lighter, less back strain than trying to pick up a reel that may weigh up to 85 pounds and trying to twist and get it on a tree or hold an axle and slide it through. All right, it's got the easy carry handle there. We also have the Coil Pack Minis, great for service trucks. When we talk about the system, again, we look at, here's a cart to handle it. So you can load that up. It can hold up to 8 coil packs. So you can have a full boat home run and something else in there if you need to. All right, we're showing our quick rope here, the 1/8-inch quick rope. It's good for 1,000-pound spray. We have our guided. So you're gonna take off the coil pack cart. You got this set of rollers at the top. You're gonna come off the top of that. Those wires are gonna then pass through the guided into your conduit. Well, what don't you need there? You don't need somebody putting lube on it. You don't need somebody physically pushing the wires up into it, because the force required to pull these out of the coil pack is so much less than to get a reel spinning. All right. So again, you're taking that person at the feet end. Their responsibility is basically setting up the head real quick and watching the wire just to make sure it goes in smoothly. All right, we're also showing our XD1 puller here. That's rated for 1,000 pounds pulling. It connects any 1/2-inch contractor grade drill. As Bill alluded to before, we've actually some smaller feeder pulls. We've seen people use these for some small feeder pulls. Great for site lighting. One of our guys was out with a contractor a few months ago doing site lighting, parking lot lighting, and they did it the way they would normally do it, and it took them 15 minutes for pull. And then he set them up with the quick rope, the coil packs, and the Maxxis XD1, and it took that 15-minute pull down to 3 minutes, right? Which again, it's 12 minutes. That's fairly significant. Well, every 5 pulls you do, you save an hour. You know, and how big is that parking lot? How many of those pulls are there? This contractor, that's what they mainly do, is they go around and do all these site lighting for the box stores. That's a big one for them, just by thinking a little bit differently. We talked about the handling. You know, usually see with those big reels, people either putting them over the back or trying to carry them out in front of them, kind of putting a lot of stress and strain on the back. The coil pack is designed to just hang at your side. And again, old versus new, you know, 2,500 foot spool of 10 weighs about 96 pounds. The coil pack's going to weigh just about 50 pounds. The tension coming off, you might have 60 pounds of tension to pull that wire off a tree versus 18, which is going to translate directly to your pulling tension. And on kind of an average run there, it's probably going to just about half the pulling tension. It does come in a 4-wire payoff. Again, super. It's great for service trucks, or I think of some jobs I was on where, you know, doing rooftop units. You're trying to bring up coils of wire up to your roof. Here, you just carry the 1 coil pack and you got everything you need in one package. When we think about low voltage fire alarm cable, also available in a coil pack with the no lube SIMpull jacket on it. It's going to make it easier to pull. And then we also have that in the barrels. When we think about the barrels for fire alarm, I used to do a lot of fire alarm work. A lot of time you have these long poles, right? And after you do a couple pulls off one of those old plywood spools, the edge of the plywood snap, break, and it's getting hung up every time it goes around. And then you're constantly like, is there enough left on this to get this pull? Fire alarm, they're not crazy about splicing. There's a lot of different requirements over circuit wire. We move to that barrel configuration, you're getting a lot more wire in that thing. You know, we're looking over here, some of these, those numbers get kind of smaller. over 10,000 feet, 12,000 feet of wire in one barrel. So it's eliminating a lot of those end pieces of spools that's like, oh, I'll use that for jumpers or something. All right, on the MC cable, we have the MCPS Duo. It combines the power and control signal into one cable. Also have that in hospital or healthcare facility rating, where it's got the separate ground. And we also have that in our NM cable. Great for LED or dimming projects for smart buildings. What it's really doing is it's just taking it and it's eliminating the need to run your power cable and your signal cable. It's putting them in one. So now you got one coil you're handling, you got one thing you're strapping, you got one entry point to your boxes and fixtures. And it's just, you know, so you're eliminating connectors, you're eliminating all these little bits and pieces along the way. And again, those little things are going to add up to big savings over the cost of the job. So here's the MCAP. This is, you know, a lot of folks, this stuff has been around for a long time and people just don't realize it's out there. What it does is it eliminates having the separate ground inside the plastic jacket. It replaces that with the number 10 aluminum that's, we'll call it an intimate contact with the jacket, the armor, and it actually provides a superior grounding path. It's going to clear a fault quicker. And it also eliminates the need to terminate that ground in each box. You know, if you think about terminating wires, it takes you a minute or 2 minutes to twist those grounds up in a box. Again, it's only a minute, but how many thousands of boxes might you see on a high-rise building? And at times, really going to add up. Also available in that healthcare facility grade for when you do need that independent ground. So it's eliminating that makeup time in each box and also at your panels. You know, if you have a 42 circuit panel, that's 42 grounds. You don't need to land in a panel. And then our SIMpull fittings, these kind of just make it so you cut your conduit remit and you slide the fitting on. They're removable with the tool. When we think they come for different configurations, really big savings here is on rigid. We don't need to thread the conduit. They're rated to either go over the thread or a cut end of that rigid conduit. And just think of, you know, I can think of jobs that would really suit myself to not have to pull out a threader, not have oil on a job and not need to worry about that. Also available for EMT on PVC, we're eliminating that need for that adhesive. If you're ever working in a small room or a tight space with that PVC adhesive, it's probably not great for your brain cells. So you're just eliminating the need for that, or that, you know, somebody didn't put the cap on a PVC right, and that glue is done, and you need another one. And also for liquid tight. That kind of brings us to the end here. I hadn't seen any questions popping up in the chat along the way. If anybody wants to unmute, jump in with questions, we'd love to hear from you. Or if Bill or Johnny want to jump in and hit anything I might have missed.
No, good job. And again, Joe, what we're trying to do with this is just, you know, let people know what's available out there. I see so many contractors that still not aware of some of these solutions that we have. If they're using them, you know, like some contractors are using these solutions, there is ways that you can, you know, improve on it. You know, from using the calculator to using, you know, the XD1 for smaller pulls. And, you know, information is power. And the one conversation I had with the contractor up north was standardization. That's another thing that we see. You know, you got different project managers that do like to do it the way they like to do it, right? Well, that's you have that learning curve when you get somebody on a job. Well, how do you want this done? Well, if everybody does it the same way and we use the same type of materials, there's no question in that. That, again, we get into that mobilization time, you know, on the job. That's some things we got to consider, you know, at the contractor level now, standardization.
Yeah, we had even visited out with the contractor last month, and we were up in the Vegas area doing some training, and we did some contractor visits. And you know, the guy had bought some of our equipment from us, but he had ordered all the wire out, just master reels of 500,000s, you know, 2,000 foot reels of 500,000s, all black. And it's like, oh man, I wish he had talked to us before he did that, because he's forced himself into a job site that was really tight. That means he's going to need to set these reels up almost out the back door, and then manage that cable in through to the switchgear. And there's like a ton of switchgear on his job. Whereas if he had stacked them or got a SIMpull reel, he would have been able to roll right up to that back of the gear and probably eliminated the need to have 4 or 5, 6, 7 people just getting that wire to where it needs to go.
Mm-hmm. And again, it gets down to safety. I was at a safety conference a couple of weeks ago, and 2 of the guys there still using black reels. And I said, well, how many are you having to set up on a job, versus using this? And I said, it's safety. Every time you touch a piece of material, it's a risk for an injury. So you reduce that risk of those number of hand touches, you reduce your liability risk. So that's huge. And again, that's where we got to start thinking is, how do we do more with less, and how do we reduce that risk on the job? Because really that's what this is about. You're shifting from a variable, cost to a fixed cost. These solutions are fixed costs. This is what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
You got all that variability you're talking about with those black reels. That's you don't know what that, it's an educated, I call it, what is a bid? It's an educated guess. And you're guessing how long it's going to take you to do that. With a lot of these solutions stacked, now this is a fixed cost. You know what that's costing you versus that setup time. I know what one setup time is versus setting up 5.
Yeah, even thinking just about those black reels, right? How are they measuring those off once they cut it? Right. The electrician's tendency, they don't want to be the guy that cuts that wire short. So it's always going to be, 8-10 feet long. And then, oops, we got one less pull out of that reel than we thought we were going to get. Whereas
exactly. Always the last one comes up short.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, oh, now we need to order another set of reels. All right. Well, Beth, I haven't seen anything come in. So if nobody's got any questions, we can call it a day here. We got the cable pull calculator coming up a couple hours with Johnny. And that really just, like I said, that's kind of the entry to these solutions. That's the entry point to this.
Yeah, so I'd encourage you guys to y'all to jump on this afternoon, and we'll go through the calculator and kind of give you an overview of how that works and how that can help you on your job sites tremendously.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Bye-bye. Thanks.
Yeah. See you everybody.